How's it going, Critter family and Horsey people? I hope you all are doing well. I have a crazy monkey of a kitten in my lap trying to chew on me. So I might be distracted a little bit. But this was a video that was recommended to me, I believe, by Chips from the channel. If not, then somebody else in the Horsey world recommended this to me. Talking about this is Milestone Equestrian, and she's talking about bits, tack, equipment, talk. Featuring Hernia Horse Part 1. So this is a very long video. We're just going to go over a couple of points here. Right now she's talking about, as you know, this is a type of bridle, you know, where the bit goes in here and then the reins connect to it for the non-horsey people. She's talking about when you... Did you just fall? She's talking about how tight people can put this part here that goes around the nose and how low it sits, and trying to you know, point out that there's cartilage here, and this is not even where the bit goes. This is just as tight as it can be on, of course, a horse skull, to show and demonstrate that that she's trying to demonstrate the strapping a horse's mouth shut to keep a bit in their mouth, or to put a nose band around to keep, you know, supposedly keep control of the horse when I think you lose it. So we're going to start here and we're going to kind of jump around. She does talk about she does go over the different types of bits here, which we will also cover. So hopefully it won't be too long that I'm talking and yammering. But using all this footage under Fair Use Act, just giving my point of view. She's giving her own review and her own point of view, and I'm just kind of, you know, reviewing this. So no harm to anybody. Don't wish any, you know, any mean, dislikeful comments or hateful comments towards anybody. If you want to support her, please do. Her name is Milestone Equestrian. That's her channel.
Because they can't open those jaws, so they just clench and expose their teeth.
So she's talking about, you know, like this is you know, a certain type of bridle people can use, or they manipulate the bridle in a way, or even a halter too, so that way you get, you know, supposedly more control over your horse when you're just using more pain compliance. I've seen people with halters way down here on the nose, and they do it on purpose. And this is all just cartilage. So
then if you want to take it a step further and put it down even lower and then like really crank it.
Golly.
Oh my god. Sorry, doornail.
Doornail.
Let's really crank it. I'm going to bring this back into his mouth so that I can hold it tight. Okay, so I've tightened it. Like if I was riding a horse and I didn't want them to open their mouth and I was just using a noseband to stop it, I would do it up tighter. Like this.
But I mean, like, why wouldn't people? I mean, I'm not saying that she does, but like, I don't get people's reasoning for why they don't want a horse to open their mouth. I mean, I guess I can think of it because the horse has a bit in their mouth and they're trying to relieve that pressure of the bit, or you know, the pain of the loud, heavy hands people are ripping the horse's face off. But
barely any movement. And then also, like,
and she also talks about that's going to cause more anxiety in the horse, just like anybody else. Having your mouth, you know, as she says, wired shut, you don't have any control over that. And then also having a bit in there on top of that. Even if you don't have a bit, you just tie your horse's mouth shut.
Presses down and flexes that bone. And like I said, this bone is a lot stronger than it looks, but it's poorly protected, and a lot of the fragile cartilage that's in that area for a living horse,
absolutely,
is easily damaged. So this is why you don't want your noseband to sit this low. And I also want to add, like, any dropped noseband or like flash type noseband, they're made to go in front of the bit. You buckle them in front of the bit, which means by default you need to be setting up the buckle to be going in front of the bit, which is like right around here. So
just sounds very painful and uncomfortable. I think she does show us her own style of bridle, or the bridle that she uses. Oh, here's also, I guess what they call this is flashing. I always just called it a noseband.
When you tighten it, so I'm going to try to do this.
So this is used here to keep the horse's mouth, I'm sure, shut and keep the bit, so as they say, in place.
So not only, I showed you how restricted even just the regular Cavesson noseband would be. And then now look. So that's why I don't like flashes. So obviously that's not a real flash, it's a shoelace, so I understand it's not going to be the same action, and this bridle doesn't fit in properly. However, that shows how restrictive it is, especially when you the bitted bridle. Is where this part of...
Okay, so this is, I think the one that she uses. I don't know if it's her own design. It might be, she might have mentioned that this is her own design of bridle, or at least the one that she does use. We see here, a couple of things. The first thing I see is I'm not a fan of bits. This does look like a leather bit, and it also does look like it has a possibility of leverage. I'm just saying, like right here, this is where I assume you would clip your reins to. So this part would probably be under the chin. So what happens is when you start pulling back on this is going to pull down on this leather bit and possibly pull back on this, or at least you have a little bit more leverage. Because as this goes down, this goes up. So I don't like bits, period. Especially if you have this fancy stuff.
The underside of the noseband connects.
I mean, I don't even like the fact that it's for me being a hard cured leather is no different to me than using a piece of metal. I mean, it's just as stiff and rubbing. It's just going to cause a different type of pain. I don't think you could. Unless you're just absolutely psychotic, I don't think you would break a tooth, at least, with this, like you would with an iron bit. But the fact that you still have this rubbing on gums, and no matter how soft of hands you are, I mean, you use what you want to use. I've just preferred this not to be, in the mouth.
Notice how much further back this is. The purpose of this is to keep the bridle off of the noseband, off of the face more. So it's not
That's good, though.
Restrictive.
Good.
The noseband on this type of bridle is more...
I do like that it looks very nice and padded. It's very nice and comfortable. If this were just like this, you can make this a bitless bridle. Take this little strap off, and then away you go.
An aesthetic feature than anything else. And yeah, so it leaves more room for the cheekbones, and then look at how much more the mouth...
A very good point that, also the cheekbones and how the jaw moves, that they're able to use that. They're able to be more comfortable in this.
Can open as a result.
And we also want to keep in mind, why would our horse be opening their mouth, while we're riding? Horses can open their mouth for yawning purposes or eating or interacting, licking their lips and whatnot, getting water. But if they really open their mouth, then we see, okay, why are they doing that? Is it because we're too hard on the bit? We have too loud of hands. We're hurting them in some way. Usually that's the reason why people get nosebands or flashes or whatever you want to call it, to tie their horse's mouth shut, because the horse is able to get leverage away from the pain of the bit, or because the horse is expressing that they're in pain or fear. And so people don't want people to see that, or, whatever.
And the difference is, honestly, largely it's the attachment point of the underside of this. The fact that it's further back means that it's not restricting directly at the front of their molars anymore. So way more movement of the mouth. Way more movement of the mouth.
So we're going to go into her assortment of different bits that she's showing.
So this is one I've never used before, and I'm sure the one that people would start having the most questions about. It's a foam bit. Completely flexible. I've never used it because I feel like the foam would irritate a lot of horses.
I mean, yeah, I can agree with that too. Like, if you're going to be using a foam bit, just get out of the bit, period. You don't need that. Like, I mean, if anything, then yes, I guess I would prefer to use this, but, is it, what kind of foam is it? Can the horse ingest it, if they start chewing on it, which a lot of horses do. And you know why they chew on it? Because they're not used to having something in their mouth. It's not natural. So all these people try to come up with excuses. I'm not saying she is, but... What? You're upside down. A lot of people try to come up with excuses that oh, it's a soft bit. It's this. Just get it out of your horse's mouth, or admit that you need it because you don't know how to ride without one. You don't know how to have soft hands and as soft as you can be in a bit. Like Rick Gore says, if you can walk a horse in a halter, you can ride them. You don't need a bit. So this foam, would be like the best option, but it's also very big. They have to it can take up a lot of space in their mouth. It can, I'm sure, absorb a lot of saliva. It can be, insanitary, so you have to clean it a lot. And again, they can ingest part of it, I imagine.
And the taste of it, probably. It's like a sponge material. However, I've heard that a lot of people like this one for horses who have mouth injuries. It is very flexible.
If you have a horse with a mouth injury, then don't ride them with a bit. It's like, God, we're putting a Band-Aid on it. You don't, and I'm not saying this to her. I'm saying this to those people. Like, you don't see the problem. The problem is your horse probably has a mouth injury because of the bit. And if they don't, then don't ride them in a bit. Give them time to rest their mouth. I mean, really, you have to come up with an excuse to still ride your horse when their mouth is hurt? I mean, when I had my wisdom teeth out, that was one of the most painful, procedures I've been through. It wasn't, a typical procedure. They had to go in and surgically remove them, break them apart, and it was a whole ordeal. But oh my God, it was like at least 11 days of extreme pain. And that's, having teeth removed and whatnot. I mean, I couldn't imagine having just a fraction of that discomfort and having somebody trying to put something in my mouth, even if it's foam or whatnot, especially if they have an injury. It can rub and irritate and hold bacteria that can spread. I mean, it's just, again, this is not against her. This is just against the what excuses people might use for
But I would just
having
personally prefer using a leather bit. I haven't tried it on a horse yet, though. I will do that soon. And then I will let people know.
I don't think you need it.
This is another leather bit. This is where you can kind of see the chewing damage right there. A horse that was a heavy chewer used this one.
So, again, why do horses chew? It's either a coping mechanism, it's due to pain, it becomes a habit, they're trying to get it out of their mouth, leather, the way this looks, it looks like it's rolled leather, and it looks still like it's very, very stiff and very uncomfortable. I think it would rub on the horse just as much. And again, we have to think, why are they chewing? Why it's a vice. It's a coping mechanism. They're irritated. When little kids or puppies are chewing on everything and teething, it's because their gums hurt because teeth are coming through. Horses may or may not be teething still because they have their little baby caps fall off their teeth and they have their adult teeth, but it's still just uncomfortable to have this in your mouth.
But it's still okay to use.
It's very stiff.
You just have to keep an eye on that. Like if you're riding in a horse that chews.
And also, I wouldn't use this on another horse because it's very rough now. It's been chewed on, and so this can rub and irritate that same horse or another horse's gums.
Each ride, I wouldn't ride in this one. But that kind of shows the damage that can be done. This one I don't like as much because of the stitching right there. It's more abrasive.
I can agree with that.
It's not going to be directly against the bars because of how it sits.
But it can still rub on the tongue. It can still rub. It'll find some way to cause, irritation.
It's also not natural leather. This leather was stained. I wouldn't recommend getting one like this.
So good on her for realizing it. It could be. It has been stained. It has other chemicals to it, very highly processed, and we don't want that in our animal's mouth. That's why I'm not a fan of rawhide or the, those big, smoked bones that they have in the pet stores, because those are very highly processed.
Prefer the Sweet Billy's bits, leather bits, like the one I showed you on the other one.
So that
another one from Sweet
looks
Billy's.
Also very stiff, and it looks like someone, a horse was also chewing on it. I wouldn't want this in my mouth. I wouldn't want it rubbing on my wrist all day, let alone in my mouth. It's very, very stiff. I mean, and this is going to rub underneath the chin. And I think she says that they have this so that you could basically use it as a war bridle, so you don't have the bridle, you just have the bit in the horse's mouth. This
is just not their rolled leather bit. I like the rolled leather better than these flat leather bits because I find that they're less abrasive on the mouth.
I mean, if it's less abrasive, then the fact there's something that's still abrasive. I mean, it is less abrasive, but it's still a bit, even if you use a leather one. Yes, this will rub a lot less, probably on the gums or rub them a lot less raw than this one, but you still don't need it. It's still putting pressure on the gums. It's putting pressure on the tongue and the mouth and the blood flow and nerves.
And I also got some of my bits custom from Sweet Billy's because their rolled leathers are quite thin if you don't go the custom route.
Okay. So she's aware of, she doesn't want something like a wire across her horse's mouth. It sounds like, she does want something that's appropriate for, the width. So, I mean, there's a lot of good things, and I'm not saying this to hate on her. I'm just pointing out things that I see as far as what I would be looking for. I wouldn't be looking for a bit. If I was going to be using one, I'd probably use one of those rubber ones that this looks like a rubber one, and one of the type that Barry Hook, makes and produces and supports. But she may have one that bends as easily as, he can bend it with one hand. that's a soft, as soft as a bit can be.
It's designed to be ridden without a bridle if you would like to. Same thing when it gets
Very
really
stiff.
warm, it is way more flexible, but as you can see, it's quite flexible as is.
So I don't know if that's
practice flexing
my
them a ton
computer
when
or the
they're dry,
video.
'cause you can break the leather easier.
So the fact that you have a stiff leather that can break, I mean, it's so stiff, and you're going to put that in a living creature's mouth.
And they have a lot of different options. They even have different options on firmness for... I just wouldn't practice flexing them a ton when they're dry because you can break the leather easier. This is one of my older trust bits. I don't use this one as much because I got a new one.
So that looks a lot softer,
this is
a lot easier to bend. Again, there's still metal right there that's popping through. I mean, I would prefer this one over the last
Trust
two.
Innocence bit with the D-ring, and as you can see, it's a very, very flexible rubber. This one does have a very thin metal core.
Okay, so yeah, I would be worried about that.
I used this one for years, and that's the current damage on it, as you can see. It's still usable. I just started using the other one because it was a slightly smaller mouthpiece that fitted.
I would prefer, if I see any of that, I would be getting a new bit, but... And then now we got what looks like some nunchucks.
The Happy Mouth is a
Happy
plastic-coated bit, so there is metal underneath. Your horse cannot chew through this all the way. The problem with
But they can just damage their teeth. Again, the problem is not that we're seeing why our horse is chewing, but we just stop the symptom of the horse is chewing.
Happy Mouths is that when they do get chewed on, they can get these sharp little points that need to be filed down because it is plastic.
As well as there's metal that's cracking their tooth, or if they're chewing on metal, it's not good for the mouth. And this looks like maybe a piece of plastic that spins.
So I personally wouldn't spend money on Happy Mouth again to buy new bits because I like trust bits better, and I find that they last longer and they're softer on the mouth because it's not a hard plastic. But I'm not saying that this is a terrible bit to use. They are...
I mean... that's a very large D-ring there. It might be called, I don't know, an egg or whatever, certain special names they have for bits, I don't know. Unless it's going on a big horse. I mean, there's just a lot of room for that rein to slide around and pull.
It's not that I'd be opposed to using it. I would just probably wrap it in Seal Tex.
The very, very hard iron, heavy.
Because I'm swaying away from using pure metal.
Good.
In terms of rubber bits, these Centaur Eco Pure bits are the most cost effective. This one was $32.95 Canadian,
Dang.
so very, very affordable. I like these ones because for a rubber bit...
I mean, that's also the thing, too, is that you if you go through bits a lot, or the fact that you have to, buy multiples, versus just having your halter like that your horse is already used to, or not having to worry about that, you save that much more money. I mean, horses are expensive enough as it is. You can save that much more money towards, part of their farrier cost, or, if you do it yourself, for the tools, or for some of their feed or grain, or vaccinations. I mean, I don't know, that's another $32 you can use towards something else.
They do them a lot thinner. I find some of the companies that do this type of rubber bit do them way too thick for the mouth. And they also have more mouthpiece options. So I really like the fact that they do this with the peanut in the middle.
Why
the
peanut, though?
Doesn't dig into the tongue in the same way that a Dr. Bristol or French Link can. So that's why I prefer these.
But it still is there for a reason. So it still does something. It doesn't necessarily dig into the tongue from what you can see or what others can see as bad as others, but it still digs in, or it rests upon the roof of the mouth. So it's still there to cause more discomfort than a regular snaffle.
This one, as you can see, has not been used. I'm not a huge fan of loose rings because they are less stable in the mouth. However, loose rings are a good choice for a horse that is a little bit strong because since the rings rotate, it makes it a little harder to lean on. But it also...
So, again, we come up with excuses as to, well, if we have this behavioral problem, it couldn't be that the rider needs to learn something different. It's that we need more power, more pressure, more leverage, more pain, more force to stop the horse instead of... And I'm just saying this because I think of things as I'm a trainer. So I look at animal behavior as, okay, it's not the animals, the animal is not at fault. What caused this? And if humans are interacting with animals, we're causing it. If you're in a room with a horse and somehow you get kicked in the head, or you're with the cat in the room and there's nothing else there and you somehow get scratched, then you probably, chances are high that you did something. You're not just standing there doing nothing. Animals don't just do stuff for no reason. Unless there's a very small percentage of animals with like weird genes or like they have a medical condition. But that's like the exception.
Also means that like for a rider who has bouncy hands, the loose rings will amplify that motion. So I wouldn't recommend a loose ring to a beginner rider, but I would recommend a loose ring for someone that needs a little bit of an extra something but still wants a soft bit that is just...
How about that person learns to be a better rider without relying on force? That's just my opinion. Like these are just cop-outs. It's just like a prong collar with the dog or an e-collar. That you blame the animal and say, we need more something, we need more force, we need more control. How about you learn how the animal works, and the less you fight the animal, the less force you use, the less the animal reacts. So let's look at this one here, and then we'll call it a day.
You can see.
And yeah.
That kind of rubbery material with no metal core.
That's what I'm talking about. Again, I don't like bids, but if you're going to use one, I think this would probably be the one that I would go to.
I've used it on a lot of client horses and babies, and there are some shoe marks, but it's very, very minor. And then the Bochet, like I said, it takes pressure off the pole. This is Harlow's bit. I got it for her because it's dressage legal, and she has poles.
Oh, there's a little dog in there.
Galloped in an elevator for most of her racing career.
Oh, goodness.
For regular training, not for breezing. So I got this for her, and she really likes it, and I love the fact that it's...
the horse accepts it because horses, accept it, and she probably doesn't fight a whole lot. So that's great. Great. Glad to hear it, and glad to hear that it can... if you're going to be using one, they try to make it as comfortable as possible, takes pressure off the pole, which is the back of the head, on a horse. So, that's great.
Because, unfortunately, the straight leather bits that are the most similar to this, in my opinion, are not. And it is skinnier than... this guy. So
if you're not putting a whole lot of pressure on the horse's mouth, then it doesn't really necessarily matter if it's thinner. Then if you have a big fat bit in the horse's mouth, if it's just resting there, you have soft hands, then it doesn't matter how tiny it is, right? To a degree. Like, we don't want a shoestring in their mouth. Unless they're light enough that they can respond to that. Like my Shiba was so soft on leash. He's a dog, but I could literally throw a shoelace around his neck and just use a finger and just barely pull it in this direction through his, it didn't even touch his skin because he had so much, fur in the way that he would just respond to that much pressure. That like I was said that I could like neck rein him like you do a horse, because he was soft. And you can do the same thing with your horse. That, I didn't start him with that. I could also use a belt. I could use my arm. I could do whatever, a pool noodle. But I just barely tap him with any amount of pressure. And the point of the shoelace was to show how light of pressure he responds to, not because it's digging in or it's hurting him.
Does that have really small little mouths and low palates? This is great. I would highly recommend this one. This is going to be the bit that Banksy will get for being like ground driven in when he is eventually bitted, or he'll use a leather bit. But I really like this one.
That's cool being, ground driven. I think that's great that she's, working with her horses and she's trying to do the least evasive thing possible. I think, no animal needs these tools. Humans do, even for people who will claim that, oh, my horse needs this or my dog needs this. Or it's like, no, you need that as the human because you don't understand how your individual dog works. You don't understand how the species works. But, so... Did you just fall? Where are you going? Alright, so this little monkey's being crazy. So we're gonna end that there. Playing with it. That's the microphone. No, don't grab it. No! So we're gonna end that there, and I'm gonna go play with this little monkey. So again, nothing against her as an individual. I'm just saying, this is just my opinion of I wish somebody had told me things like this so I wouldn't have made the mistakes that I did. I'm not saying that anybody's bad for using these things. Just try to better yourself, and in the end listen to the animal, and do what makes sense to the animal. So thanks for watching. Thanks for the suggestion. Hope you all are doing well. Say hi to your little critters for me. Give them some kind of love and they appreciate. And until next time, practice some peace, patience, and positivity.